So rather than, I guess, talk about a specific thesis, I guess I'll speak a little bit about what I'm for in machine learning investments. The first, and I think it's one that you'll hear a lot from VCs regardless of the investing area, is certainly team. I think that, unlike or sort of in contrast to some other areas, this is a field where there's still a relatively limited supply of deep technical knowledge and people really skilled in the application of machine learning in business areas. So this is an area I really focus on. It's one that also we have in-house expertise. We actually have an engineering partner at our firm who is a machine learning expert, and he helps us analyze both the team and the technology whenever we look at an investment in this space. The second thing I'm really looking for is around data. So I think, as many of you here know, machine learning is most interesting when you have very unique and large data sets. So you see a lot of companies that come and say, hey, we want to do X or Y and Z in machine learning, but they don't actually have access to sufficient or unique pools of data in order to actually make that happen. I think also whenever you're training a set of algorithms, you really need ways to measure them. You need output. And so that's another thing that we look at is, do you actually have the ability to train algorithms in a cost-effective and timely manner? And finally, of course, we're looking for applications that have real business impact. So while we see lots of teams that are great technologists, it's rare to really combine that also with business impact that has real ROI. So I want to talk real briefly about one of the companies in our portfolio called Orbital Insight that I think is a great example of a company applying machine learning techniques to solve real business problems. So this company was started with the observation that there's really an explosion of geospatial data happening and to happen. So many of you have heard about a lot of companies starting to launch microsatellites. There's obviously lots of drones that are starting to be flown in commercial applications. And all of these things are rapidly increasing the amount of geospatial imagery data. And so this company felt not only is that happening, there's also a big back catalog of satellite imagery available. And so it wouldn't be interesting if we could start to analyze this at scale and create sort of a macroscope that could zoom out and look at interesting economic indicators and other things that can come out of looking at the complete data set. So the team here was one that really caught my eye. The CEO had previously led Google Book Search, so he was very familiar with dealing with large quantities of data and had already applied machine learning at scale. He also had a background in robotics at NASA and had worked at places like Climate Corporation, which have also previously applied machine learning in other verticals. From a data perspective, there's obviously, as I commented, a lot of geospatial data. What really struck me here is that they'd already gone out and secured very interesting business relationships with some of the biggest holders of this geospatial data. And then the first things they were looking at were things like financial indicators. So trying to predict things like crop yield or oil sitting, waiting to be refined. And these are indicators that data is available on a historic basis. So they had a way to train these algorithms. It's just they wanted to be able to give their clients access to this data before government published indicators, for example, were actually available. And finally, from an application perspective, while we looked at the company relatively early and invested in the Series A, they already had paying customers from hedge funds and a pipeline of other industries that were interested in this sort of macro level data.
So, Indy, it sounds like you're not interested in companies that don't bring their own data or have a way of looking historically.
Yeah, it's not. I wouldn't quite characterize it that way. For example, Orbital Insight again doesn't have any completely proprietary data, but they had a very unique business model with respect to gaining access to that data.